to episode 20. Holy crap. Hello and welcome to episode 20 of Great Things with Great Tech, the podcast highlighting companies doing great things with great technology. My name's Anthony Spiteri, and in this episode, we're talking to Justin Thomas, founder and managing director at DC2. Welcome to the show, Justin.
Anthony, how you going? Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Yeah, really looking forward to talking about, something that's close to my heart and where I've come from in industry, data centers, cloud services, backup and DR, just a lot of great technology that you guys have pumped into your services, and a really awesome story as well, local to Perth. You're certainly a busy man, and, we're going to basically explain why you've been so busy, especially over the past 12 months, right? But before we get into that, and before we talk about DC2, if you like great things with great tech and would like to feature on future episodes, you can click on the link on the show notes or go to launch.gtwgt and register your interest. And once again, all episodes are on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe again. There's a little button down there where you can hit subscribe. And if YouTube isn't your thing and you want to consume this as a podcast in that traditional way, head to anchor.fm, but also we're on all Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. So any podcast station you want to listen to, we're there now. So with that out of the way, Justin, we've got to do that at every episode just to keep the subscribers going up. Let's kick into DC2, and let's talk about before DC2 a little bit about you and a little bit about where you came from, because I think that makes the story of DC2 even better. So maybe just give us a little bit of background about yourself and how you got started in the industry.
Yeah, well, it probably goes way back. Actually, started out life as a real estate agent.
Wow.
To IT. And when I was sort of 18, 19, the folks had a real estate office, and I started out as reception in property management. And then I was, obviously IT's always been the hobby. And through that journey, started up a real estate and property industry based software and data company.
Okay.
We ended up having over 300 real estate agents and valuers across all of WA using our products, reselling sort of valuer generals and land titles information and all that sort of thing, and sold that business to RP Data, now I believe CoreLogic, back in 2007.
So RP Data and CoreLogic, they're basically the guys in Australia where people go to basically get housing valuations, and all the banks use them and all that kind of stuff. So basically some of what they're using today is still what you created back in the 90s, right? Was that the 90s or 2000s?
2000s. Yeah, 2000? Mostly 2000s.
Not dating you that much. Apologies for that. I think we're about the same. Vintage, but that's an awesome start though. So then so you've written the software. What happened next?
So we had the data, and we had like RP Data was sort of coming in to compete with us, and the Real Estate Institute were competing with us, and it was just getting sort of harder and harder. And then they sort of came along and said, "Hey, we want to make you an offer." And I said, "Hey, perfect timing. It's getting harder and harder," and it just worked out that way. And had to take our servers and everything over to I think it was Queensland in Brisbane, to their head office, and to integrate with all of their platforms. And sort of walked in, they had all their racks and servers and everything all in the office with air cons. And I sort of stood there because it's the first time I've really seen a data center coming from sort of SMB, sort of IT, sort of space, software, not really in that space. And I sort of stood there and went, "Oh, I wish I had a data center." You got to be careful what you wish for, And I think that's probably where the first thought came from, and that was that one. And then I was working on a fiber optic sort of international project between Singapore and Perth. Did not eventuate, but part of that was building a large data center, and in that project, we did a lot of work with the Department of Commerce here in WA, and they at the time had just recently built the Djakovic Centre down in Henderson as the Australian Marine Complex Tech Park.
It's probably worthwhile saying as well that you and I have crossed paths across the last 20 years a lot, right? And even the RP Data thing, like where I used to work in Osborne Park, over there. Next door was RP Data. So we've just had a lot of crossovers, and we'll talk a bit about that later. But yeah, it's quite interesting.
We did have VCAP together as well.
Yeah, exactly right. Done a few things, but yeah. So okay, so you've seen this data center, you've had an idea about data centers, and then you've taken that and taken it into Technology Park. So you built a data center basically.
Yeah, so we built that back in 2010, and obviously back in 2010 there was very little cloud. It wasn't really a word that was used. It was all around co-location, and it was a good model coming from real estate. It's a technology real estate model, and that's what I really liked about that. You're renting space out, mixing it with technology. So sort of both of my history and passions come together. And then we had customers sort of coming through saying, "Oh, I love the data center, but I don't want to buy my own servers anymore. How about, you guys setting up a platform I can just, buy servers from you, virtual servers." And that's a great idea. And that's sort of roughly the time that cloud started to come together and come around. And we started doing that. And that's where the cloud thing started.
So that DC was sold to Amcom, which is now Vocus, obviously through a few iterations of purchases. But Vocus basically now are a telecommunication and data center company, like pretty big, right? So you sold that to Amcom in 2012, and then did you take a break, or what was the next step after you sold that data center facility?
No, we pretty much rolled straight into focusing on cloud services. Some of the, I think Vocus wanted the data center down there to have their footprint extend down there, but we were more focused on cloud at the time. So we, with Mark Dignam, senior tech down there.
Mark's your co-founder, right?
Yes, yeah. Mark, he's the man that makes all the blue cables sing and dance. So we set up DC2. We've got a rack in Perth IX.
I know Perth IX. I used to look over Perth IX in my old office. I used to see the data center through the glass.
Yeah, so we set things up, no pre-sales, and we just got things going from there.
So before we get into the tech of the cloud and the hosting and the virtual servers and infrastructure and what you guys did, leading on to today. I'm interested in just the DC world, right? Because we don't talk about it often. You don't hear it, mentioned that much. But I mean, I've got memories of data centers being, very cowboyish back when I first started working in the early 2000s. I remember it was an Amcom data center down at 1 Adelaide Terrace. And, my company that I was with, we were one of the anchor tenants in that data center. And man, I remember going in, having the racks there, putting in the computers, and literally just pulling up floor tiles or floor panels and looking for power and going, "Oh, that'll do," pulling it under, plugging it in, like eating in there. There was really cowboy type days, right? And it's amazing that really from and that was, I want to say 2005-ish era. From 2005 to 2010, what happened to solidify and make data centers proper in terms of, all the red tape that goes around it now, all the facility management, the security. It really accelerated from those early days where you could go in and plug something in and pull some power and not worry. So what's your take on the data center industry in terms of, where it was, where you started? And obviously we'll get into a little bit about, foreshadowing a little bit the future of where you guys are at. But where do you see those early days and how they sort of are compared to today?
As you said, I mean, some of the stories I've heard, some of the smaller data centers, and around that time, all the data centers, certainly in WA, were smaller, 100 racks. I mean, all the Acua data centers, which Amcom also bought, they were all 100, 200 racks tops. And then the Metro IX data center came along out in Belmont, and as sort of the biggest of the small data centers, if I can, sort of say that, with absolutely no disrespect. There at the time, it was the big data center in Perth, it's probably, with IT driving so much more of our lives, everyone sort of looked at it and said, okay, we probably do need to put some more rules and regs around the data center space. And back in 2009-10, before we built the Henderson data center, I'd never built a data center before, so I thought, well, I've got to start talking to people, and met a guy, Tony Curry, over in Sydney at the time, and he's a bit of a trailblazer, a bit of a thought guy. He'd almost be another good one for you to interview. He's got a great story too, Anthony.
Awesome.
I met Tony through a friend of a friend, and he said, well, I'm actually hosting a couple of gents from Intel in a couple of weeks in Sydney. They actually helped design the Chatsworth chimney cabinets with Intel to solve their blade server heat problem. So how about you come to Sydney? I can introduce you to the guys and, talk to them, and I'll arrange a tour of Global Switch and everything. And this
Global
is
Switch?
2010.
Yep, I know Global Switch. Well, that was a fun data center, Global Switch, wasn't it?
Oh, far out. It's an amazing place. Absolutely amazing. And for someone who's never really been in that big space before, to learn some of the things that we learned from the guys and touring Global Switch, it's like, wow, this is what a data center could be, should be. And at the time, there was no big data centers in Perth. Yeah. And then Fujitsu came along up in Malaga, and then XDC came along, and we've now got
some
3, and now
ones,
the 6th. So it's just, I suppose, a journey of IT. IT's getting bigger, data centers getting bigger, Facebook, Google come along, everything's getting bigger and more online all the time. You can't be offline. So, you can't take your Coke in a data center.
I think you made a good point there as well. And one thing that I certainly noticed at the time is that was when Google and Facebook were starting to build their own DCs, do things their way. What I noticed is that a lot of companies were trying to emulate that sort of design and that success. With racks that weren't racks and PCs that weren't PCs, and just slide in, slide out, no covers. It was a very interesting time, because I remember Perth AX, when Next DC came into town, even the ones in Melbourne, it was kind of, they were trying to push it as, you can be Google, you can be Facebook, but I think the reality of that is it's not the same. No one can be a Google or Facebook when it comes to, or Microsoft as well with their Azure and what they've done with their technology, their modular technology. So at our level, at your level, I think you shouldn't probably aspire to that, because you've fallen a heap. So how did you balance that, thinking about where they were and what they do with their scale versus what you need to do to sustain a business?
Oh, good question. It was probably more the data centers for us. The Henderson one was focused on colo, and then that went with Amcom. But the data centers for us and moving forward are around being able to control the environment from the diesel and the generator right through to the handoff to the virtual machine to the client. Okay. So anyone I suppose can go and rent a rack from NextDC, and NextDC do a absolutely smashing job. I mean, they are the benchmark in Australian data centers. That there's absolutely nothing there. But for us, it's being able to control and have that. Some people like to say that one throat to choke. We've got the physical data center right through. So for organizations, having our ISO 27001, for example, that covers not only the physical but also our cloud platform, where it's not well known, but NextDC have their 27001 covering their physical, and then it's up to the individual cloud providers, so the IT VAR, MSPs and VARs out there, to then do the same for their cloud platform or what have you. But they're not covered together. It's all separate.
Yeah, the service responsibility model would basically stop at a certain level, right? And then from that stack up, it's basically on your own.
Yeah. So for us, it's really about being able to manage and control the environment and the expectation and the delivery to the client.
All right. Yeah, that's interesting. So let's talk a little bit about the cloud services that you offer, because I never forget when this is another time when we crossed paths. Where I was sitting in a VMware course. Where was it? It was out in some sort of industrial area. Do you remember where it was? I can't remember exactly, but you were there.
That was our VCAP course out in Kewdale.
That's right. It was a long way away. We got meal vouchers to go have really unhealthy food at lunchtime, and we were on that course together, right? But I guess that's
told that story a few times.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, that lined up perfectly with what you guys were doing in the virtualization space, right? Because you've built the DC, you've got this new data center. Where is that that data center is in Osborne Park. Is that where that lives? Your
primary... our current our smaller DC, which we started building sort of 7-8 years ago, is in Osborne Park, and our new site's in Bibra Lake, and it's about 10 times the size, and it's going to be tier 3.
Because I've visited the one in Osborne Park, right? So before we get to the Bibra Lake one and the good stuff that I really want to get into with the modular DC. Talk about the hosting and talk about the balance. Like you said, I get the story. The narrative around why you're doing it is understandable. You've talked about it, one throat to choke, control end-to-end the stack. So there must be some challenge, though, in balancing both ways, balancing the hardware for the DC versus the virtualization platform. And you offer, so let's think about what you offer from my research. You offer infrastructure, physical colo, you've got backup services, DR services, you've got, I think, VDI services. So you're doing a lot. Talk about those services, maybe number one, and let's talk about the VMware platform virtualization first, and we'll talk into the DR and backup and whatnot. But just talk a little bit about that platform.
You said it's actually a lot of services, but as a tech guy, you would actually realise that it's actually not a lot of things that we actually do. We've got CPU memory and we've got virtual machines. What you use those component pieces for can be one of 100 different things. Could be VDI, could be backup, could be a SQL server. It's just, and they all sit on IBM, HP servers, whatever it be, with some storage. So you've got your hardware in your data center, but from there is a lot there, but it's made up of the same component pieces, and that's really what it's about for the customer. What you use it for is really what it's about. So if you're doing your marketing from our perspective, if someone's got VDI in their mind, you have to almost have a message of VDI, because if you have a message of remote desktop, they go, oh, I don't want that, I want VDI, even though they're almost the same, virtually the same thing. They're still virtual machines and all the rest of it. So obviously we have the backup, which we're doing all our own backups for our own platform, so offering the ability for external customers to use our platforms for backup and then stand up their backups in our virtual platform. Same component pieces again. So it's actually more of a, what are the pieces we need to do this this thing. And it sort of answer the question.
It does, because what it kind of highlights for me is that what this show's all about, right? Great things with great technology. So you're effectively leveraging the technology of the compute, the storage, the networking, which Mark and you got. Mark, obviously, I know he loves that networking piece, and you put it all together. You're actually putting it together with the technology that you've built into the data center, which facilitates that compute. But then you're letting your customers dictate to you what you build on top of that and the services you offer. And that's the great thing about technology, right? So I think it answers it beautifully, and it's why we're talking, because you guys are doing some great things with great tech, right? So just to basically reiterate that.
Oh, you can try, I guess.
Yeah, exactly, right. But this is the great thing about why I love talking to service providers, managed service providers, because you look at something so much differently than the average company, right? And if in your case as well, you've gone about taking a very hands-on approach to your data center builds as well. So talk about that, because I've seen photos of you and your company, your son, your family affair, your employees actually get hands-on and actually build and design some of these things.
Guys got to have a hobby, I guess. And when some people go to work, I just do what I do during the day. I don't sit. Sometimes it's work, absolutely, right. That's not fun all the time, especially when you're listing your company. You got IPOs and bloody prospectuses. Oh, that's hard work. But guys got to have a hobby. So, and building things. I like to build things. I just come up with ideas, and I like to build things and keep busy. My dad's, you would have seen pics on the website and news articles. My son likes to get involved. He's not as handy as I'd like him, as he could be perhaps. Kids today, mate. That's good. Logan, if you watch this later on, it's all good, mate. We love you. but screwdrivers trying to pass on that. My dad and I have always worked really well together. You might argue like banshees, but the job job gets done at the end of the day, and that's we have fun. But plasterboarding, there's too many people today want to swipe left or swipe right and just get something. They don't want to go out there and try and make something happen. We're always trying to solve problems, and that's how we've, back in Henderson, hey, I don't want a colo anymore. I want to be able to rent a VM. Okay, what's the problem to solve? Let's put some servers in place. So we put some servers in place, started cloud, and we needed to build a data center. We didn't have, hundreds of thousands of dollars cash sitting in the bank just to do it. So how else are we going to do it? Well, we have to do it ourselves. We have to roll up the sleeves and get it built, learn it, design it, make sure it's to spec, to code, all the stuff you have to learn to do things properly, working with the engineers to actually engineer everything. It's just, you just got to do what you got to do, I guess. Yeah. But how to balance that between cloud and data centers, it just happened. I don't, balance.
You're obviously quite successful. You're obviously successful at it, right? Like it's, we'll talk about the IPO a little bit later at the end, but that's a great realization of all the work that you've done, right, to get to that point. Let's just say, so the hosting services, so the virtual machines, you have you got, just remind me as well in terms of how you work. Do you work through partners directly, or have you got a public-facing site where customers can click and basically create their own resources? What's that shape like?
We're working on that. We have a partner-first model, and we have worked through partners as a priority. We do have a few direct end clients, but we work mainly with an IT department. So the IT department is effectively doing the IT support. So we don't do the IT support, but as a partner-first model, any customers will go through partners as a priority. If there's any ever questions, straight through the partner. There's no question, because we don't want to compete with our IT MSPs, and we've got 40 plus odd partners. So having that, log on to the website and buy a VM sort of thing, in many respects will compete with our partners, but through the software arm of the business, we're actually automating that, so our partners can get more convenience, more self-service, more capability without having to sort of talk.
It's all about scale, isn't it? It's all about scale. So for you, going through partners helps you scale because you're reaching more people, but then you want to enable the partners to reach more people and themselves, and offering those sorts of services and software and the ability to do all the automation and procurement is part of that. So you mentioned the software as well. So you guys have got a development arm, right? And you guys have done some asset management software or something to go out and do some discovery? It's
this close to being on our own platforms. But one of the problems we had is that around, and you'd be familiar with this problem, the Microsoft SPLA reporting every month.
Licensing. Don't talk to me about licensing.
Who wants to know about that? And it's an honesty-based system. And with Microsoft, there's no carrot and stick. It's all stick. There's no carrot. It's if you do it wrong, they'll send in the auditors and give you big fines, 100, 200 grand, common fines. I mean, the stories you hear, just about everyone, doesn't pass their audit. So a couple of years ago, we thought, well, if we're potentially going to get fined for doing our best because no one passes an audit, so to speak, well, let's spend that 100 grand developing some software, and we had. It actually works reasonably well. Actually works quite well.
And what's really funny about that? I've just had a memory trigger because John Pavey is. I've had a history of John Pavey as well. So what does John do in the business? Just to give John a plug.
Plug John. He's been around forever. Sort of BDM. I mean, he's a dab hand at plasterboarding as well. So he's out there building things. He's the cement and the bricks around this place.
So John, and I think you know this story, but just to tell everyone, so John was actually head of IT or working in the IT department at John 23rd College, where I went to school. That's where I first.
Yes. He had told that story many years.
When I was a little fat kid, doing IT at John 23rd, that John was the guy teaching me how to type. And then a few years later, and this is what comes back to this asset management software, when I think John was at the city of Fremantle at the time, from memory. And I was sent out to basically install this software that we had developed in my first company that was asset management software that basically did license management. And I had to go around to all the computers in this department and install this piece of software. There was nothing like automatic deploy or anything back then, or if there was, I didn't know how to use it. And John was there too. So it's just an interesting...
Anthony was the automatic deploy.
Yeah, I was the automatic deploy. So that's just a crazy side note, and it's a sign that, you know, the industry is quite small in the city. But, you know, to actually go through the growth for me now that I'm old, you know, and I was young when John started, and it's just crazy to think. So let's
John's still here. He's down at Bibra Lake now.
Yeah. So Bibra Lake. So that's a new facility that you've got. So you've got Osborne Park, and then you've opening a Bibra Lake facility. And just talk, you've said it's larger, but how does it compare? What's special about the Bibra Lake facility?
The Bibra Lake facility, size firstly. I mean, Osborne Park, the whole place here is give or take 300, just over 3 square meters. I think the block of dirt down there at Bibra Lake is 5,000. So it's slightly larger. And the site was originally developed by the Red Cloud Frontier DC over the last sort of 7 years or so, and that their project stopped or ceased back in 2018-ish. And I think the site went through administration, everything last year, and we've been working with the landlord to take over the property to finish it. And the site did achieve Uptime Institute Tier 3 design accreditation, which expired just as we took it over. And so it's largely built already, but there's still a lot of reverse engineering, and we've been down there for 5 or 6 months, reverse engineering, looking at everything that's down there,
right,
understanding what they did, and trying to bring it up to modern day spec, because it was originally designed back in 2013, and IT and servers have changed somewhat since 2013. I think it was three kilowatts a rack or thereabouts. The average is now 8 if you look at the global numbers. So
I was going to say, I remember requesting back on my old job. I remember requesting 10 kilowatts plus per rack. You know, like that was a struggle to get. So all those great memories are coming back.
That's what we run in our cloud: 8, 10, 12 kilowatts a rack. You know, that's normal numbers for us now.
Yeah, that's right. So I just want to talk about. So we'll get into this because time's getting short, but I want to really get into this because I think this is a really cool part about what you're doing, right? Leading into IPO and whatnot. This modular data center, this renewable energy modular data center, you've done a lot of engineering work yourself to design your own PDUs. So I think in 2017, you kind of started that journey towards a modular data center. So maybe talk about that and what you're doing in the community, just to level set for the guys out there that might not know about Perth. It's a mining city, mining state. There's lots of remote sites out there that need, modularity, need edge services, but power's an issue. So when you think about harnessing renewables, it's kind of the way. So just talk a little bit about that and how you got started.
Yeah, it sort of started around back in sort of 2017 on the back of Bitcoin, when that first went crazy, the digital currency side of things. And there's obviously, being in the data center space, there's a lot of push for obviously Bitcoin digital currency mining. So I went, this is interesting. But then moving into a sort of edge compute, but more high performance computing, HPC, your weather modeling, your oil, HPC type of applications. If you look at weather modeling, oil and gas assay processing, Bitcoin mining, they're all very similar in aspect, and having the cost of the OPEX, the cost of the power, being able to locate your processing on a wind farm, on a solar farm, in the regions behind the meter, so that we can get our OPEX down to much cheaper prices. That's really what sort of drove that. But now we've got the explosion of interest, and 5G and IoT and all the stuff back 3 or 4 years ago was only just starting to bubble through, is now almost day to day. So yes. What we designed with the modular data center, so we could just drop down on a wind farm very quickly, instead of having people out trying to build things out in the middle of nowhere. We can build it here, and having like 40 kilowatts in a rack. We couldn't find PDUs that could actually handle things. So we actually put the
so why
builder
is
hat
that?
on again.
Just maybe obviously not going into too much sort of electrical detail, but why is that a problem? Why are the traditional PDUs not able to facilitate that sort of modular design?
Well, it's more the density. I mean, there are some 63 amp PDUs we found, sort of Chinese brand, Australian standards, and all the rest of it. If something didn't come to pass with Australian standards and insurance and fires, and it's a big thing. But 40 kilowatts in a rack, you start to talk really high end power distribution in data center componentry, and the PDUs are thousands of dollars each, where we needed something that was, to spec obviously, but not thousands of dollars. And all the traditional data center stuff is 32 amp sort of 3-phase, balancing 3 phases, and that's sort of why we sort of built that, so that we can integrate it with the networking into our portal, so that it could all be integrated, power and networking all integrated into one solution.
Yeah. So you guys just started from scratch and decided, you know what, I'm going to just create and make and design my own PDU.
Well, yeah, actually, I didn't quite plan this, but here's the proof of concept. It just happened to be on the desk here.
That's awesome.
I sat down
obviously it's got a cover when you put it in the racks, but that's awesome. So
that's the proof of concept, but the production doesn't look like that.
Yeah,
it's real.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a really good way. So, and you've won recently have you run some contracts to actually get a modular DC out in the country, or what's sort of working around?
Yeah, we've got our first ones up in our Midwest site, and we've got multiple customer inquiries daily coming through to host. Obviously, Bitcoin's gone through the roof, so everyone wants to have that interest. But it's the same requirements for larger capability. So we're gradually filling up that. We've got a couple of larger parties, megawatts worth of conversation at the moment, and a couple of other announcements we're working on. So
just on the Bitcoin thing, so the crypto mining thing. So you're getting people coming to you saying, we don't want to colo necessarily with you, but we want to buy a modular data center that we can put somewhere to mine digital currency.
Yeah, we've got guys who have not got the data center background, but they've got miners, or they're buying miners, and they've got a solar farm. So I've got miners and I've got a solar farm. Where do I house them? Great. So and that's one of the reasons we built our own modular data centers, because we looked at the commercial solutions out there, and they were hell expensive. They were off the charts, and not competitive from some of the cheapy, Chinese type offerings that come through. So we had to build it from the ground up, not the top down. Instead of stripping stuff out, we had to add on and question every part that's being added on to get to something that was cost effective. And we've been told by our customers that we're working with, or that we're quoted with, that we're on the money. So
that's awesome. Yeah, because Bitcoin mining is all about getting the cost of mining for a coin relative to the cost of the coin moving forward, right? So there has to be a balance. So if you can make that efficient, if you can draw on natural resources, renewable energy, and we'll link to all this sort of stuff in the show notes as well, because I find it quite fascinating, but it's a really good story. Let's finish off by talking about your journey to IPO, because I think this is interesting, because not a lot of companies do this, right? Especially in Australia. The tendency is to stay private, but you recently went through the process of lodgement and IPO. And you guys, did your IPO, was it in December that you guys went officially?
November.
November. On the exchange, right? Yeah. So just talk very quickly about reasons why, process, and what that holds for you guys, moving forward.
Yeah, well, we along the way, obviously data centers and cloud and this sort of activities are quite capital intensive, and we pretty much not so much exhausted, but really, I'll use the word exhausted, our peer group and our shareholder group and all the rest of it. And we had some larger projects like the DC Modular and the DC Soft, and then obviously Bibrel 8 coming along. The capital requirements to move forward were much higher than we could either deliver over time from reinvestment. That takes time. So we decided to IPO. Found a really good corporate advisor group and brokers. Thanks Shane Wee from Alto Capital. Got to give him a plug. He's just the most amazing guy.
They'll be happy. As long as they subscribe, I'm happy. So if you show them the video,
absolutely, I tell Shane to
YouTube,
subscribe. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, they worked really hard. Started with an RTO, a reverse takeover.
Okay, yeah.
But the ASX didn't like the mining to tech anymore. They don't like that. So that was at the beginning of last year. So all of last year was pretty much trying to raise capital and list, and then the market sort of with COVID hit, and then it's sort of like, well, no, the market's hot. Let's just go straight to IPO and smash it out. And we managed to list in November. And
cool.
yeah, it was very, very, very interesting year.
Yeah, it's got to be a ride. Yeah, especially doing it through COVID. But like you said, I think the timing was right. Amazingly to do it, and from the results that I've seen in terms of the initial allocations, the actual cost and the pricing that went out, it's been a great sort of thing for you guys. So well done there. Awesome. So just to finish, these are the questions I ask, pretty much everyone on who comes on the show. So, it's all about innovation and disruption. So, where you got to today, I mean, what was your thoughts about how you disrupted the market initially? What made you successful? What disrupted piece got you to where you are today?
Most cloud providers were providing that self-service. If you look at Amazon, Google, you can't talk to anyone. There is that self-service drop-down box, hope you pick the right thing, where we provided that for our partners. Hey, we can help work with you to develop the solutions for your clients. And we'll, because the cloud, it's a little bit different to traditional IT, but it's not completely different. So we just work with them to sort of train them and things. That's probably the biggest difference.
Yeah. Okay. And what about future disruptions? So, you've obviously done a lot of great work. I can see how you've internally disrupted yourself because you're hands-on. That's like amazing, crazy internal disruption, right? But how are you going to continue to internally disrupt yourselves to continue your growth trajectory?
Oh, tough question. Probably keep doing more of the same, questioning everything, not just accepting what is what is. You gotta keep asking. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, I get that. And I think what you've talked about just laying it very much out there in terms of the data center, you've got this compute, you've got this storage, we've got to make it work somehow. We know that we can provide service offerings. We can do great things with the tech that we have. That's kind of epitomizes your success. So yeah, well done to DC2. What I'm going to do, I'll put some things on the show notes. So we'll do a little bit of information about your modular DC, a bit of the work. We'll list some IPO notes, and we'll basically go from there. So look, before we finish, if you aren't subscribed to the show or you're new and you'd like to hear about it, please subscribe again. You can catch up with all the episodes on YouTube or at the web on gtwgt.com. And with that, it was a great conversation, Justin. I'm really, really proud, I guess, Perth company as well, DC2. Looking forward to where you take the company next. And until next time, we will see you guys later.
Thanks heaps, Anthony.
No worries.